Hello, general psychology students. So we're in week 10, and this is the second video talking about memory chapter, and it's the last video. We're going to finish it in this video. So let me call up the PowerPoint slides, halfway through the PowerPoint slides for chapter 8 for memory. And in the previous video, I talked about Atkinson and Sheffrin's theory of memory, which talks about how sensory input information comes in and it goes to the sensory short period of time. I mean, we're talking, a couple seconds at the most, 3 seconds at the most. And then most of that information decays and it doesn't move further in the system. But if attention is paid to it, then it moves into the short-term memory, where it can stay for less than half. And so you can practice and keep it in there, otherwise it's lost. You give attention and say, oh, I want this, I want to know this for a long time, then it gets moved into long-term memory. And we talked in the last video how long-term memory information can stay in there unless you've had brain damage or something forever, as much as you want. And in order to get it out of long-term memory, we need to use different retrieval techniques. And in the last video, I talked about the different kinds of long-term memories, how we've got semantic memories and episodic memories. And so that is all Atkinson and Sheffrin's model of memory. Now I want to talk about another model that exists, and it's not that they can compete. Both of these models can exist at the same time, but this model is called the levels of process. It talks a lot about how we encode information, how we bring it into the system, really affects how easily it can be recalled, and even what we do with the information. So it really emphasizes the degree to which new material is mentally analyzed. And so it's called processing is varying in depth. So I always think, I don't know why, but of a pool. So you can be in the shallow end of the pool, or sort of if it gradually gets lower and lower, the medium end of the pool or the deep end of the pool, right? So what's shallow processing? So shallow processing that's coming in. So let's say I show you 3 letters, B, E, and D. Shallow processing would be you noticing the color of the letters, be you noticing whether they're all capital or whether they're small. So it's really focusing on the physical attributes. Say the words or the letters B, E, D. So if you're hearing it, shallow processing would be identifying, was that a man's voice or a woman's voice? How loud were they talking? What did the letters sound like? So it's very the sound or the touch or the taste or the smell or the in this case the way the letters look if we're talking about visual processing. Intermediate processing would be recognizing that these are 3 letters. That's the letter. You're hearing it. That person just said 3 letters. The A, B, B is the second letter in the alphabet. I know the letter B and E, and that's the 5th letter. And so you're doing that. Intermediate processing, you're recognizing what that is. It's the letter B. It's the letter processing is when you make the information meaningful. So if you're going to deeply process the letters B, E, D, you are going to imagine a bed. You are not going to see the letters B, E, and D or focus on whether they're capital or large or capital or small, whether the letters are blue or red or black. You are deeply processing this information. You are going to picture a bed. To you, those 3 letters mean bed. That's what they mean. And same thing if you hear BED, what you picture if you're processing information deeply is a bed. You can imagine either your bed, a different bed. And what the people who believe in levels of processing theory think, of course, is that the more deeply you process the information, then the easier it's going to be to retrieve it using a similar type cue. So if you retrieve information semantically or by object, if it was intermediately processed, and if you're going to retrieve something that was shallowly processed, you need to retrieve it by were those letters blue or were they black or that kind of thing. It's not going to help you retrieve whether or not the letters were in capital letters or not. So that's the levels of processing theory. Okay, now we're going to step away from the theories and we're just going to talk about some interesting phenomena. One piece is called flashbulb memories. So these are memories centered on a specific important or surprising event. They're very vivid. It's like you took a snapshot or short video. So if I ask you, it probably won't work where you could say, do you remember where you were when you first heard about 9/11? Or when I was in school, people would say, do you remember where you were when Kennedy was shot? I was only 1 year old when Kennedy was shot, so I didn't remember it. Probably like some of you are now saying about 9/11. But these big events that happen in your life, a member of yours had a heart attack. Do you remember when you got the call? Do you remember when you first went into labor? Do you remember when you first learned that you were going to be able to take the whole family to Disney World? Whatever the big event is, well, we seem to think that we have really good memories around these really vivid, big, important events in our lives. It almost looks like you took a picture with a flash, right? The problem is, or the situation is that even though people are very confident about these memories, they are certain that the information that they're giving you is accurate. We now realize that they're very inaccurate. So when you ask people, when they go back and really try to track where people were, like oftentimes people will think that they're in a state that they weren't even in, like they were in Massachusetts at that time, but they'll say their whole memory is of them being in Oklahoma. So it's all, and these flashbulb memories are confident about the memory. And so you have to be careful with those. Let's move to another sort of memory dysfunction, amnesia. So amnesia is memory loss that occurs without other mental difficulties. And you can have retrogressions prior to a certain event. And these tend to be rare, but when they do happen, oftentimes it comes back. And it can be selective even. Anterograde amnesia is when you lose your memory for events that follow an injury. So it's what can happen here is the memory. There's that movie 50 First Dates, where if you see it, it's not that great of a movie, but Adam Chandler, I think, is in it. And she can't remember anything that happened after, I believe it was an accident. She meets him. It's the first time she's met him, and he's fallen in love with her and how that goes through. At this point, I want you to stop the video and this video and watch the two videos that I've posted after this. I've got two videos about two different people with amnesia. One is like a documentary with Alan Alda, who's talking about it. And another one is a man from England whose memory is very poor. And this is his wife talking about it. It's time he's seen her in a long time. It's actually quite heartwarming to see how excited he gets to see her each time because he doesn't remember anything that's happened since he can't create any new memory. So just to keep track, what's retrograde amnesia? It's anything that happened before the event you've lost. Anterograde amnesia is everything after the event you lose. Okay, so that can help you decide what this video now if you want and watch those other two videos and then come back to this. Okay, I hope you watch those other two videos. If not, watch it after. What we are doing is we're talking about issues with memory. So we talked about two theories of memory, Atkinson and Schifrin's, and then depths of problems with memories. So we talked about flashback memories where people think that they're very confident about where they were at a particular time where some big event happened. But it turns out we're not very accurate at all. And then because of brain injuries or trauma or something, or after that event, we call that various forms of amnesia. Another problem with memory has to do with eyewitness memories. And so our court system believes that eyewitness memories work great. In fact, on two eyes, the person's likely to go to prison. It turns out, though, that eyewitness memories are highly unreliable. And one of the researchers that has done a lot of this work, her name is Elizabeth Loftus, and one of the groundbreaking at the time, this a long time ago, but at the time it was groundbreaking, she would have people watch a video of two cars have a car crash. And in the car crash, neither windshield broke. In fact, there was no broken glass at all. Fill out a survey asking them, what do you think just happened? Tell me what happened. And in half the people, one of the questions said, how much glass was there? How much glass broke in the car wreck? Half the people didn't even use the term car crash. It was like when the cars bumped into one another or something, what happened? How'd you explain it? Then she brought these people back to the lab. I think it was a month later, but it might have been shorter than that. When she brought them back, and it was like a recall test, not recognition, but recall. What happened? Just tell me what you remember. And the people who had answered the question that said how much glass was broken when the cars crashed into one another, the cars were going much faster than they really were. When they crashed into one another, there was lots of glass broken. In the video, there wasn't any glass. And compared to the people who were asked the question when the cars bumped into one another, did anyone get hurt or something? It was a different type of question. No, is questions that are asked around the time of an event can actually end up affecting memories of the event and making them so that they're not accurate. So there are other reasons why eyewitness information, if there's any fear involved in creating the memory, so like watching a car wreck is scary. If it's because there's some kind of a holdup, having a gun there, anything that's scary, remember what happened, is going to prepare for fight, flight, or freeze. And we're not good at higher order processing. So we're not good at listening or learning or comprehending. So like all of that's going to be lost, leading to remember what happened. And it's especially unreliable in children. So eyewitness memories are highly unreliable. And this is a study that your book talks about, where once DNA evidence became available, the number of, to be innocent that had been proven guilty or proven with quotes due to eyewitness misidentification. So it's a real problem, and we shouldn't trust eyewitness testimony. It's not very good. Let's talk about some more errors. So this would happen if something so horrifying happen that your mind almost can't handle it. And so you basically pretend that it never happened. To you, it's like it got even know that it had happened. Now, this is very controversial because that same researcher who taught us about eyewitness testimony, at one point, she went in to really study repressed memories. This is Elizabeth Loftus. There was a popular TV show then, Roseanne, and Roseanne Barr and some other celebrities, it was pretty common at the time, was talking about how through therapy, she had learned, Roseanne Barr, that she was sexually molested when she was an infant, memory of it until she went into therapy. And then in therapy, through hypnosis, she realized that this had happened. And this was coming out a lot. And so Elizabeth Loftus, a cognitive psychologist, said, I really want to understand. She tried to see if she could create a repressed memory in a person. So she took, this is just a case study, but then she's done lots of research on it, and this is true. But she took this boy who was a young man, of course, this guy had volunteered to be in the study, talked to his parents, and found out that when he was 10 years old, he lived in a particular city. So Loftus met with him and said, and of course, she had had his parents' permission and his permission and all of this. But Loftus says that I learned from your parents is that, that I learned is that when you were 10 years old and you were living in such and such a place, you got lost in a mall. Your parents couldn't find you for an hour. Do you have any memory of getting lost in the mall? And he says, no, because he never was lost. He says, no, I don't remember at all. And she says, you go to bed each night. I want you to journal about other things that happened when you were 10 years old. I want you to try to bring back memories of what happened when you were 10. And I want you to envision going to that mall when you were 10, okay? And come back. Any memories? Did any memories of getting lost in the mall come back? No, they didn't. Okay, well, your parents told me that you got lost and they couldn't find you for about an hour. So are you sure you don't remember anything? Anyway, this goes on for about a month. And in no time at all, the boy, I think, is this entire narrative, this entire story of what happened when he was 10 years old and got lost in the mall. And this wonderful couple found him and they took him for ice cream and then took him to where the security area was. And that's when his parents found him. And his mom was just overjoyed to see him again. Great memory. And he remembers it as not being a horrific situation or anything. And he just created this whole memory. And after this happened, the researcher says, actually, I wanted to see if it was possible. I told you that this thing happened, but your parents assured me that you never did get lost in the mall. And at this point, this kid is like, I know this happened. And so I think the problem is that my mom has forgotten. You know, they're older, their memory isn't as good as mine. The memory was so real to this person, to this guy, from journaling about it and thinking about it each night and trying to remember it. He then vividly remembered this thing that never happened. And so we are very cautious now about repressed memories because you can implant them. And with some of the repressed memories, it's certain therapists, it's like 80% of their clients all had a repressed memory. And then there'd be other therapists that none of their clients had repressed memories. So it seemed as though there was something going on. And so it is very, very, like it's very controversial now. We are not. So anytime that you're going to do anything with hypnosis, you want to make sure that the person who's hypnotizing you is, a quality professional who really knows what they're doing. Okay. False memories, these are vague suggestions for police therapists, this kind of thing. And so it could be a false memory that you think is repressed, but it wasn't repressed. It never happened. It's just a false memory. Okay. Here's, but this is the whole idea behind forgetting. So oftentimes we forget stuff. Well, sometimes we forget because it's hard to retrieve information. That's what we're talking about quite often. To recall something is due to interference. So there's two kinds of interference that I want to talk about: proactive interference and retroactive interference. So proactive interference is when let's say I say to you, I want you to memorize the phone number, 3535806. Okay, memorize 3535806. Everyone got that? Okay. Now I tell you, now I want you to memorize another phone number, 5911113. Some of you are going to have a harder time memorizing 5911113 because you learn that first one. That first number, knowing that, interferes with learning the second number. It's so much easier if I only give you one number. Does that kind of make sense? That's proactive interference. Okay. And the example that your book gives is combination. But then then you go to learn your one just for your gym, not for your hallway. And it's harder to remember the gym one because you keep getting it confused with the locker one, the big locker in the hallway. Okay. So it's old information that you know is making it harder to learn new information. Active interference is when new information hinders the recall of old information. See how it's the other way around. So So this would be, I ask you to memorize a list of like 10 things. I start having a conversation with you. And I say, oh, so where'd you go to school? Oh, is that where you went? Oh, wow, that must have been interesting. Okay. And what happened here? Oh, yeah, that's really cool. Okay. Now, when you go shopping this afternoon, what are you going to make sure you get? Oh, bananas, apples. All right. Okay. So now that we've had this conversation, do you remember the list that I gave you 10 minutes ago and told you to memorize? Do you remember that list from before? Those 10 things on that list? And you're like, oh, I forgot them all. Having this stuff that you used to know in the past, you can't remember anymore. So learning this new information sort of made the old information go away. That's retroactive interference. Okay, so two different kinds of forgetting. So proactive interference, information learned earlier disrupts the recall of newer material because of later exposure to different material. Okay. Now, one of the things that we know in memory is that there's all kinds of different tips that you can use. So one tip that we know in learning is that things that are early in a list and things that are later on the list are better remembered than things in the middle of those, especially better remembered. So if you need to memorize things, not understand and learn and read, not that, but if you need to memorize things, it's better to try to memorize in a whole bunch of short, different time things than memorize all. And you're in a better memory for the first few things on the list. And so if you can split up the memorizing of things, then you're going to have a lot more of those first few things on the list. That makes sense. There are other ways that can help you remember too. One is to use mnemonics. So mnemonics, as you know, or I think you know, they're acronyms. So if we need to remember apples, bananas, and cantaloupe, we might say, oh, I have to remember ABCs. My shopping list is ABCs, A for apples, B for bananas, C for cantaloupes. So ABC will help me to remember when you've been studying for exams. I think this knuckle mnemonic to help you remember the number of days in each month is an interesting one that's used, that a lot of people use. So there are little hints and tricks that we can use. And these memory techniques can be useful for studying for your class. All right, we have covered all of the material for the memory chapter, or the material that I'm going to cover. As you know, you're responsible for everything that's in the book. I hope you're finding these videos useful. Don't forget to watch the 2 videos out long either. And next week, we will cover chapter 7 on thinking and intelligence. And then the following week will be your Unit 3 exam. Remember, your Unit 3 exam must be proctored. So make sure sometime this week that you register for your proctoring. You're going to get proctored through ProctorU or Examine. Even if you did register for that at the beginning of the class, you probably want to make your appointment now. So, all right, have a good week. Be sure to email me if you have any questions, maryd@cameron.edu. Thank you.